Hello, good evening. Chris Hughes from Rebound here for another daily YouTube show on the Upstreamedia YouTube channel. Really excited for tonight's show. My guest tonight is Leicester Warriors, TJ Henderson. He was the lead top average point scorer, so I'm really looking forward to talking to him about the whole season and a bit about his journey. Welcome, TJ. Hope you're well.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm really looking forward to the show. We're just talking about there, but for me, I think you're one of the exciting players to watch this season. Lots of good highlights. I'm really looking forward to chatting to you about it. I think a lot of our viewers will probably know about you this season. I thought maybe to start with a brief introduction about your journey before Leicester. I know you got your Marion University shirt on wearing it Pride, so I'd love to hear a bit about
Yeah.
maybe some of the highlights and how you got to where you have today.
So going back to Marion, that was probably one of my funnest seasons that I played basketball wise. Befriended two of my best friends, hopefully to be long term friends. We ended up getting all the way to the Final Four in our national championship tournament, so we had a good run and set me up. So I was able to get to Leicester and have a pretty good year for myself. My first pro season, so.
Awesome. Growing up, did you have any like basketball inspirations, or maybe sort of what made you want to go and play basketball? I think that'd be cool to learn.
Growing up, it was basketball and football, but Kobe, it was definitely Kobe. He pushed me to be. That's what I got on my poster right here. It's Kobe. So he he kind of inspired me. My dad always pushed me. My mom was always really competitive, so it kind of just ran in the family. And then being able to watch my cousin play, so just being around it all the time, um, it kind of kept the ball in my hand.
Definitely, and I imagine that linked with Kobe goes a bit further. Is there any part of this game that you sort of modelled yourself? What is some practice? What maybe some of your favourite Kobe moves that you really enjoy doing in the gym or on the games?
Yeah, everybody can tell by how I shoot. I got my right leg out. I fade away every time I shoot. So it's literally that's Kobe is me.
Awesome, and it's great to see you carried on this legacy. I think 2022 is such a cool year for so many reasons, but I feel like we you know his legacy will live on with ballers like yourself, and I think the game will be greater for like people learning more about his story. I
Definitely.
Similar story. I've really enjoyed The Last Stars. Not sure if you've watched it. That was a really good show, and I think at times there's no basketball. I've really enjoyed stuff like that. Did you catch it at all? What were your thoughts on it?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. So growing up, Kobe was always my GOAT. I got to watch highlights of Michael, but I didn't really get to watch Michael like that. So this really put his greatness into perspective of me. So now I understand that Michael's the GOAT, and then Kobe, it's like the father son type deal, the big brother little brother type deal. So
Yeah, I remember. I remember. I don't. I hadn't really followed basketball until maybe much later on. But I remember reading a quote when someone was saying that they said Kobe's a goat, and he was like, "You wouldn't have Michael without me." And I always think that
uh-huh.
it's great to have the goat conversation on one level, but I think at another level, it's
Yeah,
hard to judge. Just like you say, there's mitigating factors.
different
Were there
eras.
any other, yeah, different areas? Any other players that you really sort of looked up to when you were growing up? Was it just all about Kobe?
No, so growing up, I was a big Tracy McGrady fan as well. Um, that's he kind of fits in with the number I wear now. I usually wear number one. I ended up being number six at Leicester, but number one, that was my number throughout college. And then now it's really Stephen Curry and Damian Lillard.
Definitely,
Those are
guys who
my
shoot the
guys. I
free.
really, oh yeah, put the
um,
ball in the hole. That's what I like to do.
yes, I mean, I say I come from a fan. I don't have any basketball education, but I really enjoyed watching you play. Um, you sort of always technically sort of try like make the defender second guess you and jump harsh in.
Hmm.
You obviously shot the free. Um, what sort of techniques did go into that? What sort of how what sort of practice goes into getting you to where you are today? Because obviously you've had to do a lot of work to get to the player you are today.
Right. So my biggest thing with playing is just feel. So whenever I feel good, I play good, I feel like. So whenever I have a good feel for the ball, when I can really feel the ball. So it helps me with my shooting, with my dribbling. So when I work out, I do my first 20 minutes is literally just ball handling. Then I do my next 10 are probably just finishes around the basket, just playing with them. Spinning it off the backboard and trying to see how creative I can get. Then I'll get into
Of
like
course.
some skill type moves and different shots. And then if I can do some type of one on one, some competitiveness. So
Um, I, I, would, I was only getting to spit later, but I think it sort of draws what we were talking about earlier. Um, Brief introduction, people maybe not aware of how good a season you had. You had five 30 plus point games, and we were sort of talking about them before air. And when you were just saying there, just remind me what you said about the Reading game in terms of you and Nick going head to head. What was that game
yeah.
like for you, the matchup? And did you feel like in that zone in that game?
Oh man, that was an extremely fun game. But yeah, that was one of those games where you'll be like, I'm in that zone. You feel like you can throw the ball, you're shooting the ball into an ocean type deal. So the ball from my first shot on, it felt good. So I decided I was going to be really aggressive. Carl told me before the game, go in, be really aggressive, and let's try to steal a win. And that's what we were able
Def-
to do.
Definitely. So people maybe not aware that was I think it was Valentine's weekend. Home game was
Yep.
Reading. You got the 12 point win, that was a 40 point game. Um, what has this season been like playing with Carl? How has he helped you? And, has he changed your game at all? If so, how?
So if you weren't able to see Carl play, he was a really strong defensive guy. He was like a pest defensively. So that's what he kind of pushed at me the most. Being on ball, trying to put pressure on the ball handler, and my team defensive wise, just being in the right positions, staying focused, staying locked in the entire game. And then offensively, he really helped me with my pace and helped me with space on the floor.
And I say obviously that really helped your game, and you've had some really good performances this year. Um, Obviously we don't know what's happened for next season, but I was wondering maybe with all that Carl Brown's advice, and obviously you had time to reflect over the season. Is there something you think, oh, I want to add to my game, or do this a bit more, or play on a team where I have to do a bit more defence, or what do you want to see for yourself next year in terms of maybe as a team, but also maybe an individual skill set?
Just where I'm in, my biggest thing is just being in a good league. I want to be in good basketball, and the NBL happen to be good basketball, so I like that league. But obviously, I do want to kind of try to consider going up. But that's my biggest thing. I just want to be around good basketball. That's how I was taught to play throughout my entire college career, my entire high school career. So, want to be in a situation where I'm in a system that we try to we push the ball, but are really controlled and have a really good understanding of what
Yeah,
we're going to do.
of course. As I think this was none of us know what the season will tell, but I think actually from what the season you had, you put everything in place. Hopefully, build on that. And I say it'd be great to either see back in the NBL or the BBL, especially now they've got the extra American space. But obviously,
Hmm.
we're just waiting to see what happens. And you say about good basketball. Um, what are some of like your three best moments of good basketball? In fact, maybe like a player you matched up with or a tough team. Who's sort of
Ooh.
stacked up for you?
So are you talking about going back to college or
Oh,
just pro
the
season?
NBL. We talked about college bits. I know we haven't really covered that.
Okay. Okay. Um, you said so do the college
The NBL
or
this season. So I
yeah.
just
Okay. Okay. Let me see. Loughborough. They're really controlled how they play. Everything is ran to a T. So you really have to be focused. You really have to stay locked in when you play with them. So that was a really fun game. That was a really good game for us. Let me see. Obviously Solent just because they're a well coached team. So everything they did was literally structured all the way down to their 10th player on the roster. They'll run their sets until your knees hurt. So It was that was a really fun game too.
Definitely. I appreciate that, like, this conversation we sort of brushed over your college career, but obviously let's get back to your college career. What were some of the highlights for you at Marion? So I see, obviously, you're wearing the shirt. You're obviously proud of that
hmm
experience. It was obviously good highlights for you in that.
Obviously, I mean, definitely the tournament we played. We played in South Dakota. It's not really a big state, but it was a good environment for us. I got to go against one of the. He ended up being the NAI Player of the Year. So I got to go head to head with him, and we ended up beating their team to put us in the Final Four. So
Wow.
I think that was our biggest game in the tournament. And then in our
What
conference, we had the what?
with that game? What were the memories? Because obviously you probably were, but they had a talented team. Did you feel like
hmm
that Mamba zone? And what were your memories of that game? Just imagine if it was quite a big game, you'd probably still remember some of it now.
Definitely. So big. My part in that game was defense. Actually, I guarded the Player of the Year for the country. Um, Ended up holding him under his average. Ended up offensively. Our three best players were our three seniors. So it was me and my two other best friends. We accounted for almost 75% of the points that we averaged. So
Wow.
we took over the game, um, and it was a crazy experience. The environment was nuts. The stadium was filled, so it was wonderful. It was wonderful.
I always envy when I look at the American system and the college system. It's another world to the basketball here. Obviously, there's things we're doing well, but I imagine playing that atmosphere and the thousands of fans is something you don't treasure for ages.
hmm
Um, were there any sort of like moments that stood out for you, like if you did a shot and the crowd? Because I always feel like when you go to a game, the event always seems to trump more than the actual game itself. And I wonder for you as a player, when was it maybe like, wow, this feels amazing? If there was a game that really stood out for you in terms of your college career.
We played Indiana Wesleyan in our conference tournament. It's probably 15 seconds left. I get the ball. We're down by 3 points. We need a three to tie. Get the ball. One of my the big man comes sets the screen. I do a step back, cash a three on that. Crowd literally goes wild. It's at Indiana Wesleyan's home. The crowd still literally goes
Wow, in
wild.
their house.
I
Yeah.
feel goosebumps literally through my
Oh man.
entire body. That was probably my funnest moment in basketball. They ended
Awesome.
up making a game winner to win a game though. So
Oh, that's what I
yeah, it was
love hearing these
impressive.
experience. I love hearing these experience players coming on, and as I shout out to Upstream Media for hosting this show, give me the opportunity to chat to players. If you're coming to the channel for the first time, give it a like, subscribe, group at the team during the season. We're streaming NBL D1, um, men's games, Thames Cavaliers, and they do a great job having lots of hosts on. I really enjoyed the place. Memories like what you just said there, TJ, make you miss that game
hmm
more. So I really hope we all get back to enjoying basketball. Um,
Right.
Sticking with the college experience, who was sort of the player you look back at, or really maybe like two or three players that you played with at college? You're like, wow, I'm amazed I played against them, and maybe why that experience was such a good one for yourself.
Okay. So you may not know this. Before I was at Marion, I was at IUPUI. IUPUI is a Division 1 in the city that I live in, Indianapolis. So we played Gonzaga my junior year. That's a big D1 out of Washington. And they had their guard, Josh Perkins, who was he was actually getting NBA looks at the time. He's playing pro. He's in the G League right now, actually. Um,
Oh,
but he was one of my biggest matchups. Um, I think that game, I actually outplayed him that game. I ended up having 21. I think he had 16. So that was a big matchup for me. And then my freshman year, we played North Carolina State, and they had their guard Anthony Barber. Um, he was projected as the best guard in the country at that time. Um, so that was a big eye opener for me. Like I said, my freshman year, I didn't know anything about the college basketball level. I was a very skinny guy, didn't have the weight that I have now. So that was that was definitely a key matchup for me too.
Definitely. I say amazing stories, amazing thing. Um, if you could go back and give like your pre-college self any bit of advice, what would it be? Because I think a lot of talk at the moment is sort of how we should
Hmm.
prepare the next generation to become professional athletes like yourself. And I'd wonder for your journey, what advice would you give to yourself or maybe others?
To be patient. Um, I know people say trust the process, and it's hard to actually do it, but really trust the process. Stay in the gym, and really that's it. The biggest thing is always going to be stay in the gym, but stay patient and always trust the process. It'll work out, but you have to always put in the work to get there.
Very, very good message. And I said we mentioned this a bit earlier, but we're all missing basketball. I know the NBA's coming back soon. I didn't know whether you'd be watching it. What team are you invested in
Definitely.
for this? Yeah, who you hoping will win the championship?
I told you Kobe was my guy, but I'm a Laker. I've been a Laker since I can
Yeah,
remember. So that's who I got winning it.
they definitely got some chance for LeBron and AD. Uh, is there
Yeah.
like when you look at that team now? Do you think there's anything missing, or where do you think they're going to do really
Um,
well? Because other teams might be a bit stronger
I
elsewhere.
I think I think the Lakers. I think we'll be unstoppable if we could get a shooter, a knockdown shooter, just like a shooting guard or a three guard that was a knockdown shooter. I think that would set us over the top. We have Danny Green, but just one more. I think that would set us over the top.
Definitely, I like watching Danny Green last year at Toronto. Who would you have? Is there a person that you think, oh, they need to go out and buy that player?
If we could get a trade,
Yeah,
I mean, ideally it would be Klay Thompson, just because I love Klay
yeah,
Thompson, but I don't see Golden
definitely.
State letting go of him anytime soon. So,
No. Uh, obviously, you mentioned Kobe, obviously Clay and Steph and Dame. Is there anything from their games you're like, oh, I wish I could do that shot, or I wish I'd do more things like they do on the court?
I don't know if it's more in their game. I think it's more how they do it consistently. Like with them, it's every day, and that's my biggest thing. I want to be consistent when I play. So the coach can just mark it down. TJ is gonna give me this. We know what TJ is gonna do, so we don't have to worry about it as much
Definitely,
type
and
deal.
of
Hmm.
course. I mean, obviously, we just touched on NBA. Were there individual players that you really enjoyed playing? 'Cause for me as a fan, I always felt really sorry that you never got playing a week because you'd have 40-point performance, you have 35, and you always got picked by Taylor Johnson. I always wanted to know and have you on to ask, did you guys ever talk about it? 'Cause it was often the thing where you'd have a big game, he'd have a big game, and
Uh-huh.
it seemed to be some sort of telepathic rivalry, which I'm sure wasn't the case, but be interested in what your take on that was.
Nah, so there was a instance when the same week I think I had 40. That's the game we played Reading. I had 40,
Yeah.
and then he had a doubleheader that week. I think he had 30 both games. So he
Wow.
ended up winning Player of the Week over me. We but what happened was we played them the next week. So somebody shooting a free throw. I forgot what it was, but I meet him at half court. I'm like, you just had to one up me, didn't you? Just laughed about it. And then continue playing.
Oh, yeah, I say he's a great guy. We've had him on the show as well. Were there any other individual players that stood out for you? I know we talked a bit off air before, but was there
Hmm.
any players that really stuck out for you?
I think my favorite guy to go against was Cameron Hildreth. Young guy from Worthing. He was really explosive, really wiry. So he was hard to guard. Um, Other than that, Mike Williams from Himmel, he was always fun, and Nick Richards was fun to go against.
Definitely, you mentioned all guards there, so you obviously
Yeah.
had to match up with them. Uh,
Uh huh.
maybe people didn't know about. Sorry, Karen.
No, I was
Oh, sorry.
agreeing. That's just yeah.
Oh.
Mhm.
um, if you had to sort of just sell them in 3 words each, what would you describe them as for someone who maybe like not know who they are, what skills they bring to the table?
Right. Okay. So as far as Nick, he was just super athletic. He was super athletic. He was super fast. And he finished at the rim over anybody that was in front of him. So he was. That's why he was really hard. He was just relentless. Relentless. Mike, he was super skilled. So he had a one dribble pull up. His mid range was. You could tell he spends a lot of time on it. He came from good basketball, so he moves well without the ball. So Mike was really good. Like I said, Cameron, explosive, wiry, really long. So he was really good at getting to the basket. So he was hard to guard. Um,
Definitely.
yeah. hmm
And I'll say, obviously, you've been for Leicester this season, and maybe it wasn't the season you wanted. You were close to the playoffs, but I imagine there were some good parts of season two. As a team, what were some of your highlights for yourself on this season on the court, but also off the court?
Um, just being with the guys, meeting new people. This was obviously a culture shock for me. Obviously being out of America for the first time. Um, but it was it was amazing. It was amazing. It was magical type. Um, Getting to meet the guys, getting to hang out with the guys, seeing what it's like, seeing what the culture is like out there. So I enjoyed my time.
Awesome. You say it's a bit of a culture shock. Was there anything particular that maybe you weren't expecting, or it doesn't have to be on the court to be like the culture? What was it that,
Uh-huh.
gave you the biggest surprise when you came over?
My biggest thing was the food. It wasn't that it was different. Um, just wasn't as diverse as I was used to type deal. So we have a lot of Mexican out here. Mexican is my favorite food. I didn't find too much Mexican food in England when I was out there.
Oh.
So I had to adjust a little bit to my eating.
Yeah, no, Mexican food's good. I love a bit of fajitas, chili con carne. What's your favourite
Uh-huh.
Mexican dish?
Um, I think I'm a quesadilla guy. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
I'm a quesadilla guy.
the
Fill it up with the chicken and the steak. Yeah.
you're like a Taco Tuesday guy. You do Taco Bell, get your
All
quesadilla
every Tuesday. Yeah.
every Tuesday.
Every Tuesday. Taco Tuesday.
Oh. See, I'm like I'm a quesadilla person, and I've obviously heard Taco Bell in terms of the NBA culture, and they opened the one up near me, and I was like, should I go? Because I was worried it was sort of hard. I don't like the corn. What you like the chips, the Dorito chips.
Oh
I love the
yeah.
fluffy,
Uh-huh.
floury, doughy. Well, I
Yeah,
wish I went now
me
because
too.
it looks like that's what you get at Taco Tuesday. So I'm gutted. So next, when lockdown's in better, I'm getting myself a Taco Tuesday, I think. And what one would you recommend? To say it'd be good to get a good recommendation from a Taco Bell. Not that this video is
Um,
sponsored by them by any means.
Let me see. Taco Bell, that's kind of I don't we don't do Taco Bell out here too
Oh,
much.
okay.
I'm more of like the real Mexican. Like we have a place it's called La Hacienda or
Yeah.
a La Fiesta. Yeah. Those are if you can ever find a way to get to Indianapolis, hit those places up.
Well, oh, we had a lovely like traditional Mexican near made called jalapenos. It was awesome, and then it closed down. But like you says, Mexican food is you don't tend to see many restaurants in England, and it's a shame to say it's lovely food. And was there anything else that you were like a bit surprised about when you came to England?
Um, the driving was different. Being on the opposite side of the road, being in the opposite seat. I had to adjust to that. It actually took
Oh.
me like a week to really get comfortable with it, maybe two. But I think that was my biggest adjustment.
Um,
Getting used to driving.
and were you like sharing digs with the players, or did you have to find your own plays? What was it like? Because I imagine it can be a big adjustment with someone coming over here, relocators, a lot that maybe we don't think about when we see a player come play for a team.
Right. Well, Lester, they helped me out a lot. Mark and Carl, they helped us out a lot. Both of us, both the Americans, Rod and I, we both had a car. We had a nice house to live in, so we got taken care of.
That's good to hear, 'cause I think the more and more I cover British basketball, I realise, yes, there's the F word funding, but the guys involved, they all do really hard work, and that's something I've really appreciated. If that's, like you say, the coach who really helps new players settle in, or the coach with the social media for clubs, everyone works really hard. I think that's a really positive to take. Maybe a little shots, like you say, just in to maybe different size arenas, other things. Like, I think Reading, you all have to get changed the same dressing room. Is that right? After the game,
I'm
and
sorry.
I think Leicester. I was say in some arenas, I think Leicester. I'm not certain, but Reading, you all have to get changed together, don't you? After the game, you're all in the same, which must be quite a
Yeah,
surreal
we
thing to
did.
get used
Yep.
to.
It was weird. It was definitely weird.
That's weird. I can
It
imagine,
was
especially
very
for like,
weird.
yeah, I'm sure there's a story coming now. I think you something in your head making you giggle. If it was like, carry on.
no, after we played, who was it? Thames Valley. He got
Yeah, yeah,
with Thames Valley, we always were really aggressive. So there was a little trash talk. And then we'll go to the locker rooms after the game. We have to act like neither one of us was there type deal. So that was funny for me. That
definitely.
was
And
really funny for me.
you, you mentioned Thames Valley because obviously you had the little personal thing, Taylor, and obviously it seems to be
hmm
a little bit of trash talk there as well. Did you have any connection with any other clubs? I imagine maybe more to others there was a competitive feel.
Um, I got I ended up getting a pretty good relationship with Mike Williams on Himmel. So we would talk often throughout the game. So that was always a fun game. And then going into the locker room, we'd always share a few little trash talks, but we were pretty friendly with each other, so
Yeah,
we didn't have too much going on.
I, I think it's a grey area. I really love it. As far I love hearing it. It's entertainment. As long as it's reasonably PG, especially
hmm
on YouTube. Was there like a funny trash talk, or maybe like what did they say? So imagine sometimes
Yeah,
people come
yeah.
up with
So
some silly stuff. Yeah,
no, my first game we played Derby, um, and I come out. I was really trying to get my energy up, so I was talking a little bit. Um, the guard, he literally comes to me. He's like, "Bro, you don't really gotta talk to him like that." Nobody's ever said anything like that to me when I trash talk. They'll say something back to me. So
yeah.
that was a shocker for me. It kind of made me shut up, basically.
It's as interesting you say it because I think obviously I only watched a certain amount of games. I think last year maybe even before there was a bit more, but this year definitely seemed to be less trash talk. Was that what you got from the
Yeah.
games? It sort of a lot more maybe
Yes.
respect around
It was different. Uh-huh.
different.
It was
But I
different
say
than
it's
what I
good to
was used
imagine.
to.
Um, so obviously it was more of it where you came from before. Was there funny trash talk from maybe your college days or your time at IPUI? Was there anything that really stood out as something that was
Um,
quite funny or
yeah, so when I transferred to Marion in practice, my um my best friend and I, he was at the big that I was talking about earlier. We got
Mhm.
into it in practice really, really bad. Um, our coach decided to split the starters and I up for our scrimmage. I still ended up winning. My team ended up winning, so I let them hear it. After the scrimmage, the loser was supposed to run. But they tried to forget it. They tried to come and huddle in. My team was like, no, 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 hold on. You're supposed to be running, right? Because if we would have lost, they would have made us run.
of course, yeah.
So he, yeah, yeah, yeah. So they start running. He ends up yelling out. He's like, TJ, are you happy? Are you happy now, TJ? And then we all get in trouble. We all end up having to run again. So that's a funny one for us. So we always, whenever we see each other, we always talk about it instantly.
Definitely. It does seem to be a big part of basketball in terms of like that your time you spend it training and either you got drills, so you like
hmm
running or to sort of get that sort of team discipline. I imagine every coach you had is different. Uh, what
Yeah.
was Carl Brown like as a coach in training to you guys? What aspect did he bring to your
Um,
game in terms of training?
Carlos, he's very energized or like animated type deal. So he brings a lot of emotion to us. So in practice, he would always try to keep us energized, keep our activity level high. So that was a big thing for him. He was a really good motivator for us. So he would help us stay amped for the games.
Definitely. And I'm really interested because you did mention about it being a culture shock, and obviously your experience probably really valid to people. So often I have the experienced British guy saying, "What advice do you give to the young Brits coming to America?" But I thought maybe when I got you on and you've had your first year abroad, what advice would you give to
Hmm.
maybe some guys at Marianne or other colleges that might be watching?
Hmm.
What advice would you give about making their first step abroad? 'Cause it's a big move, isn't it?
Yes. Going to it with open arms. Another thing, stay patient with this as well. Stay patient with this as well. It gets hard. Being away from your family. For me, it was my first time not being with my family for Christmas, Thanksgiving, and stuff. So, um, that stuff will hit you, but it'll be okay. It's not forever. It's a quick 8 months. So you'll get right back.
It's good to see the honest emotion there. And I think also we're taught off air, it doesn't seem to put you off because we're taught off air, like, I'll give you a chance to say it now, so I don't think we covered it in the show. Obviously, you probably don't know too much about what your next move is, but you're saying that you're looking at these different countries abroad. Is it when you're
Hmm.
looking abroad? Are you looking at maybe the standard of the league, or if you know that language, or what factors are going into it when you're thinking about that next move?
So my biggest thing is the league. Being in a good league that I think I can move up in. That's my biggest thing.
Definitely, because I imagine like the even though it's a shock to come to England, where they speak the same language, obviously maybe some different
Hmm.
uh, syntax and words, and obviously drama on the different side of the road. But I was wondering, what it must be even a bigger shock to maybe go further and go to somebody that don't speak that
Definitely,
language. Yeah.
definitely.
What are your language skills? You fluent in any other languages, or uh, what
No,
do you
so
think that
I've
the
taken
challenge to be? Yeah, Karen?
I took I took Spanish. I took 4 years of Spanish when I was in college, and I can read it, I can write it, but I can't talk it, so it doesn't really help me too much. So if I do end up going anywhere other than England,
You have to take a
it will be
crash
hard.
course then.
Yes,
I'm I'm sure you'll be fine. I think at some level English is quite an international language. I mean, hopefully it wouldn't take too long to pick up a few words. Um,
right.
I'm not sure we covered it. Obviously, this is for NBL Live, and for me, one of my favourite games to watch was your win versus Nottingham. Do you remember much about that game? Because it was a really close game, and you guys sort of just took control in that last quarter.
Yeah.
Talk me through it. What was sort of that experience like for you?
So that game, our biggest thing was just staying steady, staying in striking range. So we didn't. They ended up getting a pretty good lead on us, but we didn't. We just wanted to stay in a position where we could have a chance to come back and win in the fourth quarter, and that's exactly what we did. We started out really hot. They took control, and then the fourth, we stepped it up defensively. We got stops when we needed it, and then we were able to get out and run it. I think that game, Martin Gale actually went off that game in the fourth quarter too. I think he made like
He
four
did,
threes
yeah,
or three threes in that quarter. Yeah, so he helped us a lot. He put us over the hump that game.
definitely. And I'm really interested to get a bit more insight because I spoke to Marty about it. We did talk about that game, and I'm just thinking, like, in that game when you have the timeouts and maybe someone's not so hot because I don't think many of you were hot in that first second quarter. What does the coach say?
Hmm.
And you were sort of about to say about you get a feel. Does that net communicate across the team? Do you sort of notice those subtle
Yeah,
changes and react to them?
yeah. So our thing is we feed the hot guy. So if somebody's rolling, we're not going to stop him. We're gonna let him roll. We're gonna see how far he can. We're gonna see how far he can take us. and then but everything we want it to be a good shot. So we still want to run our offense. We still want to play at a good pace, but we are going to let you. If you're rocking, we're going to let you rock.
Definitely. And it's good you guys have that respect. I definitely saw that because I think one of the last plays you had the ball and you gave it to Martin to do the free. Obviously, shows that
Hmm.
you got that good togetherness. And I'd love to get a bit more insight to Leicester. So maybe like who was sort of like the funny guy in the team? Who was sort of like the best dressed stuff like that? What was some of the off-court experience of being part of a Leicester family?
Uh, so our captains, our leaders, for me it was Carl and Martin. Whenever I needed a question, whenever I needed somebody to talk to, those were the two guys I could go to. The funny guys, man, were Lamon. Lamon was a clown, man. Lamon was hilarious to me, and Swift was my guy. Um, so those are my guys. Obviously, I had the American with me, Rod. We ended up living together, so we befriended each other quick. Um, but he was like the protector type deal. So it ended up being like he was big brother, I was little brother. If anybody tried to mess with me, he was coming. And it was vice versa. Anybody tried to mess with him, I was coming. So I had some pretty good relationships.
I say it definitely. I think like when I watched a few days back, you definitely got that camaraderie going on and off the court. Is there like a moment
Hmm.
where in maybe a year or so you look back and go, oh gosh, I really had the time for that guy, or that was such a funny moment? Was there something that really sort of stood out from your time?
Let me see. Let me see. I know. Rod and I. It's at the end of the game. He played Loughborough. He got chippy a little bit. Some shoves were some shoves were pushed. And I just see Rod come right in front of me out the side of my eye. Runs. He's like, touch him again. So that was a funny moment for me. That's that protector aspect of it. He came out of the blue and was ready. So that was a funny moment for me between us.
Awesome. Awesome. And I'm glad you mentioned Loughborough. We sort of thought earlier how they were a very good team, tough to play.
Hmm.
What was there a player that stood out for me? Loughborough seemed more like a team in terms of any player to have a good night. But I
Yeah,
wondered for you as a basketball player, was there a particular player you're like, we've got to stop him, or who was it for you guys?
yeah. For me, the two players were Reese and I forgot their point guard's name, but Reese he was just ultra aggressive, and their point guard he controlled the show. He ran the show. I think he probably had like 8 or 9 assists when we played them the second time, and
Oh, Alex
probably
Roberts,
the
yeah,
same thing the first time. Yep,
that's
yep.
him.
He dissected us. He dissected us. So they ran that high pick and roll, and he was making reads, and he was making a correct read every time it felt like. So
Definitely. I imagine that was a really fun
those
game
were
to
the
talk
two.
about. You
Yeah.
talked a bit about Solon, you talked a bit about Hemel and TVC. Um, when you look back at this, was there like a specific game you thought that was the toughest? I'm glad that finished, or what one was the toughest out of all in terms of a unique game?
Um, Solent, definitely Solent, just because they were the best team in the league. They were so well coached that everything was organized, everything was structured to a T. So that was our hardest game. They had a really good point guard and Ian Smith. Their captain was Elliot Dads, and obviously you know Elliot. He was probably one of the most mature people in the league, in my opinion. So they had a really good team, and they fit really well together. So I think Solon was the hardest, our most difficult task.
Definitely, and I think you mentioned like Reese, Elliott, and I think even though they do a lot on the stats, but sort of really show, I think they do a lot of work that doesn't, and I always love getting the insights of players a bit more into basketball depth.
Hmm.
What skill do you think is underappreciated because it's not a statable skill, or maybe something that Elliot or Reese do particularly, but you think, oh, they should get a bit more praise, but actually maybe it's not a stat,
Right. Elliot,
or any player. But
Elliot
carry on.
actually rebound. Yeah. Um, Elliott, he actually rebounded a lot better than I thought he would. We're talking about Elliott Sentence, right? From Solon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's two
Yeah, yeah,
Elliots. I'm
yep,
glad you.
yep.
Yeah,
Elliott, yeah. Um, nah, he actually, or actually both of them, Elliott dad's and I forgot dad's name is Elliott.
so
Okay,
it's okay.
but they both actually rebound. They both rebound a lot better than I thought they could. So that's a very underrated aspect of their game.
Why was that so? Is it because maybe they're not the biggest built, or maybe they jump
Yeah,
high?
yeah,
What
yeah.
what what is it? Go on.
They're not the so Dads, he's not the biggest build, and Sittons, he's really just not too big to be as a forward. You would think they're probably 6'7", 6'8", and he didn't really seem that big to me. He wasn't really athletic, but he always carved out space. He's more of like a Kevin Love type deal to me. He always carved out space. He boxes out really well, so he was always able to find the ball.
Definitely, and he got injured, and I think if he hadn't got injured, I think maybe he would have been a bit higher up in all the stats. He obviously has that
Hmm.
Leicester connection. Did you know that when you were playing? What? So that must be quite interesting to play against his Leicester
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
connection. What were the
Yeah,
players
I
saying
actually
before the
learned
game?
that
Yep. Tell.
Martin and Elliott were really good friends. So they would always talk before the games. They would always talk after the game. So they always say that Elliott doesn't get Elliott doesn't get this game. So he can't get over 10 points. He can't get over 15 this game. So it was always that rivalry with us.
I think it really did have that vibe. You talked a bit about some of the personal ones. Is there any misses? So we obviously said that Mike, said about Taylor, and obviously Elliot with Leicester. Was there
Hmm.
any other big reasons that you came across this year?
I think the one I think the ones I missed the most will probably be with Mike. I think those would be the games I probably missed the most, just because, like I said, we befriended each other. Still to this day, we'll talk to each other via social media. So, um, I think those are my funnest games.
Definitely. I think you touched on a really good point. I think basketball really brings us all together, especially in difficult
Hmm.
times. I didn't know maybe what advice you'd give to maybe any players watching who might be struggling either because of the racism or the COVID pandemic, or what advice would you give to your black brothers or people just struggling in today's world? Because it can be quite a scary one at times for people.
Yeah, it's ugly right now. It's really ugly out here. But just try to stay strong. Try to stay as strong as we can. Stay true to who you are, and keep your family close to you. Keep your family close to you.
Yeah,
That's what I'm trying to do now. Now, keep my loved ones with me. And really, that's all. During this COVID time. If you're an athlete, try to stay in the gym as much as you can. I know it's hard because the gyms have been closed, but try to make something happen. So with me, I have stairs in my apartment, so I'll run the stairs just outside so I can stay in shape. I have dumbbells, so I'll lift weights in my apartment. So just try to make it work.
definitely. What is the situation where you are? Because I know it's different in different states. Are you able to go out yet,
Hmm.
or is there a timeline? How's that looking for you in your
Yeah.
end?
So we had the curfew thing here. So it was like 8 o'clock at night. We had to be home, and then it was 9. So it ended up getting taken down. So we're good now. The Everything's just about opening up now. Our clubs are opening up. Our restaurants are opening up. It's just at 50% capacity. Our gyms are opening back up now, so we're almost up to running.
Definitely, I think that's good to hear that you're getting there because that obviously means we're moving in the right direction and getting
Right.
towards hopefully next season. I've really enjoyed having you on. It's been great talking about Leicester and your journey. And I thought maybe to finish on your favourite Kobe moments. I know he's been inspiration for you. Maybe there was a game you
Uh-huh.
watched him play or when you saw him. What are sort of your best Kobe memories? I'm sure you have a few. You can say a few, but there's
So
quite a few
there's
that come to mind.
right. There's two. There's two. So my
Yeah,
biggest Kobe's are his 81 point game and his last game. Just because it's that's the true definition of a competitor. That's a warrior. That's somebody that's going out there and he's just fighting until he can't fight anymore. Um, going down and scoring 81 points. Everyone might not know, but that's a lot of shots that you have to take and still play defense. So that gets very tiring. And his last game, he had 60 points. He was, I don't know, almost 40 years old. And
Wow.
to go out and finish with his last game having 60 points, that's that shows a lot of heart. So that was my biggest thing from Kobe. He was just a competitor. He was a warrior, and he was always going to push it.
Definitely, and I wasn't really watching basketball much when that happened, but I was surprised that someone who finished so high, and I think that comes to his sort of mentality. But if the player was to post 60 points now and say they retire, do you think that'd be the right move, or what were your thoughts when you heard Kobe retired after he was 60? You were like, "Oh man, keep going," or
Um, Obviously, I mean, I wanted Kobe to keep playing because Kobe was my basketball guy for me. But I mean, he played a long career. He played 20 years, so I think it was time. It was time. Let him go be with his family, and live
definitely.
life. So, hmm
Of course, and hopefully now with things getting back to normal, we can all go out and live our lives a bit more. And I'm really excited for next season, and I'll definitely be looking out to see where you landed. I say thank you so much for coming on. It's been great getting your insights about your games and the players you played against and your journey. I hope you say well and say thanks again for coming on, my friend.
all right, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Is there a mess before we go? Is there a message you want to say to your Marion family or the Leicester family just before we go?
Thank you, Lester. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciated my time out there, Marion. Still on my heart. I go work out there still, so love you
Awesome.
guys. Yep.
Okay, everyone stay safe. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks, TJ. Everyone, that's goodbye from us and stay safe.